the needle has shifted somewhat. Joining me now is the Deputy New South Wales Premier, John Barilaro. You wanted a little bit more than this, but you did get a Senate inquiry, it seems like. Keith Pitt doesn't want a nuclear reactor in his backyard. You willing to have one in yours?
Oh, well, during the election campaign, I was asked that very question. I didn't rule it out. I can't rule it out, and it'll make a hypocrite of me to rule it out. But the reality is it's not about locations. This inquiry will, for the first time, dismiss the myth around some of the baggage that we've always debated nuclear energy around, and be able to put the facts on the table, and new innovation, new technology, and allow Australians for the first time to have a genuine conversation and debate about what nuclear energy looks like going forward. It's not about Fukushima or Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island. It's not about a Simpsons episode where Homer drives that old nuclear power plant. It's actually about the new technology on the horizon, and that's why I welcome the inquiry.
Well, John, you say that it's not about location, but in many ways it is, because it's got to be close to the coast, which is where the majority of Australians live. And people just don't want it near their homes because they fear that their insides are going to get cooked and they'll have, you know, thumbs growing out of their forehead and things like that.
Yeah, look, Peter, and that has always been a debate, and there are organisations that have identified locations across the country, but no, they don't need to be near the coast. If you look at small modular reactors, they could be sand-cooled. And this is the technology that's on the horizon. Companies like NuScale, no, these actually can be more inland, away from large populations. It's a very different world, and that's why the inquiry is important, so that we can actually talk about what the future looks like. Australia's a greenfield site. We get to pick the best technology around the world if we're to go down the path of nuclear energy. And we get to do it in a way that, that I think debunks all these myths about where they're located, what you do with waste, size, affordability. I think it's a new dawn, and I'm excited that we get a chance to have the conversation.
Well, do you think this Senate inquiry is just going ahead to shut you up and some of your supporters in many ways? I know James McGrath, Keith Pitt have been calling for this as well, but at the same time you have the Environment Minister saying that they're not even going to consider lifting the nuclear ban, and you wanted a referendum which has fallen on deaf ears.
Yeah, look, you've got to start somewhere. You know, you look at the UK, when they moved away and had the debate, it took a decade to come to a decision, and now the UK are building a number of nuclear reactors. We have to have, really, it's an education piece. So the inquiry becomes an opportunity to talk about, as I said, the future of nuclear and nuclear technology and what that means for Australia, and the opportunities, not just by having the energy, but the industry that is attached to it, that I believe will underpin a manufacturing sector, a facilities sector, and it'll be exciting for Australia. So, no, I'm happy with the inquiry. Let's get the conversation piece. And I'll tell you what, as I travel the state and as I travel the nation, there are a lot more Australians talking about nuclear energy because we've started the conversation. This gives us the opportunity now to debunk all those myths.
Well, Australians, I think, just for the most part, just want their power prices to go down. And, you know, like you said, it's good that this conversation is taking place. But, I mean, John, this isn't something that's going to happen anytime soon, is it? Because it's going to take 5 years of planning. It'll take 5 years to build. You're going to need help from the private sector. It needs bipartisan support. So if one government pushes for it and then it gets overthrown in the next election, then they could knock it on the head.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And there's no question that, you know, we're probably 7 to 10 years away from ever seeing a nuclear reactor, even if that decision was made today. But what we've got to try and avoid is using it as a political football. That is why the information campaign, the education piece, having an inquiry, talking about the opportunities going forward plays into that role. Let's hope one day we can make that decision, that we are able to debate the facts, not the fiction, and get on with it. But look, we've got to have the conversation. I'm not saying that this will happen overnight, but I am glad that there is an inquiry, because it does allow us to talk about it. And you're right, this is about baseload power that puts downward pressure on prices, guarantees supply, underpins an even stronger renewable sector. And we all know, with mining and with coal, that the day will come in the decades ahead where that resource will be under pressure. So I think it's the right time to have the conversation, regardless that we change any laws today.
Do you think your government is doing enough to unlock the gas resources in New South Wales? There's a bit of an unofficial moratorium in fracking. What are you pushing for, and would that be the key to lower power prices?
So when it comes to gas in New South Wales, you know, we've got parts of the state that we have banned coal seam gas, predominantly on the north coast. That's been debated for almost a decade in this state. But, you know, we've got the Santos project up at Narrabri, going through a very rigorous project. We're not being ideologues. We're allowing an independent process to to come to a conclusion that, you know, it looks like it's possible that we can get gas out of Narrabri. And as a state, we've got to play our role. There's no question. And I do welcome the federal government's announcement yesterday about looking at export control plans, a gas reservation policy, access to pipelines, and market price. And if that, you know, they are all the ingredients for a strong gas sector and an energy sector in Australia. And New South Wales will have to play its role. But what we won't do is truncate processes. If you want decisions around gas, and especially coal seam gas in New South Wales, we've got to allow the process to be rigorous, and make sure that there is transparency and integrity without any political interference. If we get that right, well, then, you know what, if the decision for Narrabri is that we will have coal seam gas, we'll get on with it.
John, just finally, your thoughts on the political hot potato at the moment that seems to be abortion. It's being debated in the lower house at the moment, and even if it gets through to the upper house, I mean, we had Mark Latham on our show earlier this week, and he said he's going to block it as it stands. I mean, how do you see this playing out?
Look, Peter, this is such a personal issue and an emotional issue for so many. My decision will be informed by, you know, I'll say it, my own personal journey, my own experience and life experience and life journey in this space. And I've spoken about that in the House previously. I just want respectful debate in the House. I think there's momentum for maybe some amendment changes. So let's see over the next couple of days what happens in the lower house, and then what happens going in the next few weeks in the upper house.
Will you vote for it with amendments?
Yeah, look, I've already indicated, and if, you know, last year on the Safe Access Bill, I voted for safe access around those clinics, and I've already come out and said that I intend to vote for the bill, but I will also consider those amendments put up by Minister Speakman and Minister Stokes.
Okay. John Barilaro, we appreciate your time today. A busy day in New South Wales Parliament.